Hey, my friends, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. We're going to do weird stuff today because I got my buddy Josh here. And Josh is, he's planning a church right now. Walk us through that. Just a quick version, Josh. What are you doing?
Planted a church here in Rapid City, South Dakota. We began at the beginning of 2020. It's called Redeeming Grace Church.
And you preached on the book of John all year long. And I had the privilege of going and sitting in on a few of those, and they were great. I like the way you come at the Bible. I like the way you think about stuff. And so I'm ambushing you with microphones without any warning whatsoever because you came to my house to watch a football game, and that was your mistake, my friend, because I'd like to have a Bible fight with you about the Gospels and which one is best. I am going to vote for Matthew, but you made a compelling case today in your sermon for John. So let me lead with this question. If you already got Matthew floating around out there as one of the early Gospels, some people argue it was the first, some people argue it was Mark, and then Matthew a little bit after that, but nobody argues John was first. Pretty much everybody thinks John was last. If you're John and you look at something of the quality and the scope of Matthew, what on earth would get in your head that would cause you to pick up a pen and be like, you know what? I think we need another one of these. Why even write it?
I think John is wanting us to know that there's more to the story. John has about 92% new information as opposed to the other Gospels. And so I think John just wants to fill out the story a little bit. I think he's also writing afterwards because he knows that there's some different ideas that are floating around about Jesus. And he just wants to nail down very clearly theologically who Jesus is, why he came, and he very much emphasizes, more so I think than the other Gospels, of the deity of Jesus. And so his godness seems to be very much at the heart of what John wants to make sure is just crystal clear in the message of Jesus.
That was really good. I feel like because of your niceness level, we're going to have a difficult time having a Bible fight. Like, don't get me wrong, I think a Bible fight would be really fun. I think it's what everyone is hoping for, but you're just so frustratingly nice about things, and you make good points. So, okay, for Matthew, my impression so far from what we've actually carefully looked at in Matthew is that this king thing is the centerpiece, that the king thing is going to be something that the Jewish people are going to care about most. They're going to think in those categories. And they've had an eye out for this king. Jesus ticks all the boxes for what this king is supposed to look like, even before he's, doing adult public speaking kind of stuff. His pedigree is right. Then miraculous things happen on the front end of his public ministry. The baptism thing, the account that people would have caught wind of the temptation in the wilderness, and then all the rumors about his credibility and supernatural ability starts to come into focus with the Sermon on the Mount, where he teaches with authority that's different than how their teachers of the law taught. And then he goes and he does everything miraculous you could possibly want to do, like all the things that are burdensome or annoying or difficult for humans. He seems to have power over all of that, and then it seems to push people into camps where they're like, no, okay, that guy's definitely the king, or no, that guy's definitely not, we're mad, we need to murder him, or the I'm probably never going to decide squishy middle. But through all of that, the question, is he the long-awaited king or not, seems to be the centerpiece. But the impression you gave me and what you said today with your beautifully crafted, by the way, overview of John is that the king thing is not the central question over there. What is the central question?
Yeah, we have the idea of king doesn't show up until Jesus is standing before Pilate in John chapter 18. So the idea of him bringing in a kingdom, being a king in a kingdom, is not John's primary theme. I think he probably feels like Matthew has already laid that out pretty clearly, and so very much around the I am statements and around the
what do you mean,
the seven
I am statements?
The I am statements in John. There's at least 7 I am statements where Jesus says, I am the bread of life, I am the living water, I am the door, I am the vine, and that very much it's culminated in John chapter 8, where Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am, which means that he's taking the actual covenant name of God in the Old Testament, God's covenant name upon himself. And so John's primary thrust is not so much the kingship of Jesus as he is the covenant-keeping God in flesh that has come to earth. Matthew's very much he's the king of Israel, and very much in John, it's more of he's the covenant God in the flesh come to save humanity.
I'm really sure Matthew has his own people in view. Every little hint, every little indication, everything that he spells out and gives us extra information on, and every bit of knowledge he just assumes that would already be held on the part of the reader. All of that says, yeah, this is written to Jewish people who would have known all of this business. Who do you think John is writing to?
I think John's writing to a wider audience, probably to Greek people. He definitely has a Jewish audience in mind because he pulls in all this Old Testament imagery, but I think he's wanting to spread the net even a little bit wider and trying to appeal to those who would have more of a Greek mindset. You know, he maybe is pushing a little bit against what kind of a Gnostic idea of Jesus, which would try to separate the spirit and the body. He's very clear to make it that Jesus has come in the flesh, and he's living in the flesh. So he really is 100% human being and 100% God, come to redeem humanity.
And that would make sense for him to be writing that stuff later, because the Gnostic question, it wouldn't have mattered when Mark was writing. People hadn't yet mushed that Greek dualism together with Christianity. They hadn't yet started to really wrestle with the how can Jesus be this and this question. It just hadn't leaked and percolated to that degree. So is that part of why you think it must have been written later, is that it seems to be pushing back on a different question?
That's what it seems like to me, is that Matthew has seen where these other three Gospels and how people have taken them.
Or John, rather.
John rather. He has seen where the story of Jesus and these other Gospels, what has then developed, the ideas that are then coming out of that. And I think he is writing this fourth Gospel, not just to add new information, but to make sure that the message and understanding of Jesus doesn't go sideways with some of these unhelpful Greek ideas that want to separate the body and the spirit, and to show that no, Jesus was a unified God-man who'd come in the flesh. And I think that's really at the heart of what he's trying to make sure is clear. Be clear on this Jesus thing.
Yeah, the kingship thing, in theory, to the original audience, it seems like it wouldn't have mattered as much to somebody from Thessalonica, somebody who was reading this in Galatia. Like, I don't care about what some little ethnic group in some distant corner of the world that I'm never going to visit. I don't care about their prophecies and their religion and their king. None of that matters. And so while I find Matthew to be infinitely applicable to me now, I can see how the mindset of the first century Mediterranean world, like, I'm just not worried about other people's deities. I don't care. We think about that differently at this point in history. John, though, it seems like even though he's a Jewish guy, he's writing with an understanding that this is going to go to a little bit broader audience, and that I am emphasis, that Jesus is the essence of essence, the independent being. That would really resonate with a Greek audience, I would think.
I think so. And then later in Acts, when Paul is speaking at the Areopagus, he talks about that there is a God who has given man life and breath and everything. He doesn't go in with a lot of Jewish prophecies because those wouldn't make any sense. No one would care about those. Right. But the idea that there'd be a self-existent, world-creating God who he himself gives life to everybody, John dovetails so nicely into that worldview of going, there must be something out there that is the creator and sustainer of all things. And actually, yes, he came and actually entered into the creation that he made and came to redeem it, came to save it. So he enters into his own creation, and he is the I am, the self-existent one, the creator of all things.
Yeah, and you don't get Plato and Aristotle out of Matthew. You can find places where they overlap, I suppose, but John opens with the Platonic notion of the philosopher king, the one who has been outside of the darkness and steps into the darkness, being fully aware of what truth is. I mean, it's like the cave illustration. It's the philosopher king. It's Plato's Republic. You see all of that stuff there. But then there's also all of this indication that Jesus is being all God and all man. It's like that kind of fits the description of the prime mover in Aristotelian thought. And so whichever camp, the more rationalistic camp or the more empirical camp somebody would fall into in Greek thought, John scratches that itch and seems to do a really good job of pointing out Jesus is your guy, no matter which orientation philosophically you're coming from.
Right, and Matthew's starting with this genealogy that would really make the most sense within a Jewish concept of seeing how those check all the boxes. John is going to start on a much more cosmic level that would, I think in some ways make his gospel maybe a little rangier for a variety of different worldviews, especially in a Greek world. That would make a lot of sense, that would be a good starting point for someone who's non-Jewish to enter into the conversation.
Can I have you jump back on microphones to talk about reconciling the timelines of Matthew and John?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to do that again when we have a minute here. So, summary statement, I'm asking you because you're my resident John expert. You just spent a year deep diving this thing. Elevator pitch, 30 seconds. Why does there need to be a John when we already have the synoptic gospels?
Because he's adding more data to the story of Jesus that's really helpful. He's also speaking to a bit wider audience that would be kind of Greek in their mindset that maybe wouldn't appreciate all that's going on in the other Gospels. And I think that John very clearly comes right in and says, I've written these things so that you'll believe. Like he's just straight through the front door. Here is what you do with this story. John is the most direct, I would say, of all of the Gospels in how exactly you respond to this Jesus.
Josh, thanks for jumping in with me. Full disclosure for everybody here, I really didn't give you any warning at all.
No, you
It's
did
like,
not.
Hey, welcome to my house. Let's watch football. No, seriously, come in this room for a minute. And then, like sheep to the slaughter, you walked in and I put this microphone in front of your face, but you handled yourself beautifully. I know you know this stuff inside and out way better than I do. So thank you a ton for that. You just put together a fantastic series of Sunday morning sermons on the book of John. Best I've ever heard. You did a wonderful job on it. How do people go and listen to that?
You can go to rgcrc.org. We've got them on our website there. You can also look for the Redeeming Grace Church podcast with a little circle logo and 3 trees in it. You could subscribe and download our podcast and listen to those there too.
Right on. Thanks, buddy.
Yep. Thank you.